Hi there guys, and welcome to another EDH Geeks video. Today I'm in the lovely City Park Radio Studios where I actually work as a radio presenter, but sometimes I film these things at home, or sometimes I film these things out and about just whenever I have the time to. But today on the video, in case again you didn't notice by clicking the description or just seeing the description title, today I'm talking about new players in Commander and suggested decks or suggested archetypes that I would suggest to new players. So we're going to go through a few of the archetypes and a few of the budget decks that I would suggest for new players. Now, of course, it's fairly easy to just get a pre-con commander deck, but sometimes it's hard to find a pre-con commander deck at your local Target or what have you, your local Kmart or what have you. It's hard to find them. If you have an LGS, it's certainly probably easiest to find a pre-con commander deck there, but even then sometimes they're out of stock, so you've just got to wait. So and pre-cons are about $50 thereabouts, so that's why I'm also saying budget. I want to keep all of these decks suggestions, and I'm going to show you some of the cards that I would suggest, not all of the cards because we'll be here all week, but basically some of the ideas of what each deck will be doing and what sort of things that you can put into that deck. And I will also put together a full deck list and have deck list links in the description, and each of those decks will be a $50 budget deck. Now there'll be only a couple decks, but like I said, we'll go through a few things of each one. So we'll have one in each category fully made so that you can go, okay, and then in a few weeks I'll have a post go out on Patreon, and that will contain the other fully made deck lists, just because it takes so long for me to put these deck lists together. So if you really want to see more deck lists, please go onto our Patreon and support our Patreon there. But with all that being said, let's get right into having a look at the different archetypes and different decks that I would suggest for new players.
Alright, so first off, in doing this exercise, I want to state yet again, and I may repeat myself somewhat as I'm going through this. In a recent video that I did suggest people who want to get into, new people who want to get into Commander, stick to one or two colors. So that is what I'm going to do, and I'm also going to be sticking to decks that can be fairly easily built with a $50 budget in mind. So with that being said, let's get into the first set of commanders that I would suggest for new players, and these commanders fall under what I call the tokens strategy. So on the screen now there are three commanders, and all three of these commanders are pretty good. So let's start with the first one, which is the one, I believe, if you're looking at this, this will be the one to the far left, which is Trostani Discordant. She has 3 generic mana and Selesnya, so a green and a white. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. When she comes into the battlefield, you create 2/1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. And at the beginning of your end step, each player gains control of all creatures they own. So she's really good. If you're making lots and lots of little tokens, she makes your tokens bigger. When she comes in, she makes a couple of tokens. So it's good if you can also find ways to flicker her. and keep making her re-enter the battlefield to keep creating more and more tokens. She anthems your tokens, so that's pretty good. There are a couple other commanders that fit into this color part of the color pie that are also good. There's the Ultrastani, which makes a token creature, a copy of a token creature, basically, and then you gain life whenever a creature enters the battlefield, or gain life equal to its power or toughness. I can't recall which. That one's all right. There are a couple of other ones that are on budget, but I just thought that this specific Trostani is probably one of the easiest and one of the best ones to go with. It makes your tokens just a lot more threatening, and it just makes a lot more tokens for you to actually be threatening with. Next up, which is the commander, which is in the middle, which is Krenko Mob Boss. Excuse me. He is 2 generic and 2 red, and you can tap Krenko to add a number of 1/1 goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield, where that is the number of goblins that you currently control. So Krenko almost fitted into the next part of the list that I was going to be talking about, which is tribal, because Krenko really cares about goblins, but you're really just creating a lot of tokens with Krenko. You really want to just go wide with Krenko. He's just gonna shoot out a lot of goblin tokens, and you're just going to amass a lot of tokens with Krenko. And there are sort of other things you can do with Krenko. Perhaps you're going on this plan of, well, I'm going to make these token goblins, but with these token goblins, I'm actually going to sacrifice them to do something else, rather than I'm strictly going, goblin tribal. I'm trying to actually create all these goblins because I want to sacrifice a lot of goblins to do something else. I want to bring out big dragons, or I want to do something else with these tokens. But yeah, Krenko is a very good commander. Last but not least that I thought of for this, there's a lot of other commanders that are in the token strategy, but these were the 3 that I thought I'd discuss. Is the one that's on the far right, which is Brutaclad, who is 4 generic, a blue and a red. Creature tokens you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a 2/1 mere creature artifact creature rather. Then you may choose a token that you control. If you do, you can create. You may make all your other tokens a copy of that creature token of that token creature. So the idea with Brutaclad is to slowly but surely sort of make various little tokens, get bigger and bigger tokens of bigger and bigger things, slowly but surely, and overwhelm people by having your tokens have haste and making them bigger and more difficult to deal with. And that's a great token commander to go into. So yeah, these are 3 good token commanders. They all give you some kind of benefit, or there's some kind of strategy that's sort of imprinted on the commander for the most part to direct you in the direction that you want to go, directing into the direction. But it does sort of show you what it wants to do. It wants to... all these commanders are doing something similar, which again is the overarching theme here, or what have you. But they're all doing something that cares about making more tokens, basically, or making your tokens bigger, or doing something with your tokens. So you can do lots of things with your tokens, use your tokens to win the game in one manner or another. I often think that if you're a new player, you usually just go into combat with those tokens and punching people in the face or punching people in their life totals um, to get the win, because that's pretty easy and simple to do. Most of these commanders, again, are going to probably fall into that realm. But we're going to move on now to tribal. Now, there are so many tribes. There's too many tribes to talk about. There's probably too many that I'm going to leave off this list that are quite good. There are a couple that are not that good, but I'm sure there's some that people would like to think about building because they just like that kind of tribe. But on the screen now is 8 different tribal style commanders. So first off, there's Leftless, the Dragon Queen, and of course she is a dragon commander. So she's a 4 mana and 2 red dragon, and whenever a dragon comes out, a non-token dragon comes in, you make a 5/5 dragon creature token, and then you can basically pay 1 generic and a red to give all your dragons fire breathing, which pumps them up by 1 power basically. So now someone might say, oh well, this is a semi-tokens commander, but really that's just an added benefit more than anything else. You're really caring about just getting lots of dragons onto the battlefield, and if you just happen to get a few token dragons here and there, that's fine. What you want to often do, because some of your dragons are going to be cheaper than Leftless, is you're probably going to play them anyway. You don't need to get those token dragons. If you get a few here and there, that's absolutely amazing and great. But what you want to do is, if you can, you want to hold Leftless back as much as possible until you've got a board full of dragons almost already anyway. And this can work well when you've been set back, when the board wipes happened as well, is if you slowly build back up, or you're slowly building up, you've got a bunch of dragons on the battlefield, and then you put out Leftless, and you've still got a fair bit of mana in your mana pool, or your untapped mana, and then you can basically give your dragons that are able to attack this turn the ability to punch in and probably win the game at that point, because once you've got to the level of having lots of dragons on the battlefield, it's not very hard to win with them. Once Leftless comes out and you've got a few extra mana spare, you don't need that much mana. It usually takes maybe 1 to 2 more turns. And even if you just put Leftless out and then you start casting a few more dragons after her, get a few 5/5 tokens, that's still a really good strategy as well. So it just sort of lends itself to being good either way. And again, just like you're going to punch in at people with a lot of damage with this deck very quickly. Next up is Adelise, who cares about wizards, and she is, I believe, one generic, 1 blue, and 1 red. And whenever you cast a instant or sorcery, all your wizards basically get prowess, which means they get +1/+1. So she cares about wizards. She also cares about casting instants and sorceries. So in this deck, you want some of the wizards that you have in this deck to have prowess as well, which is that ability to say it gets +1/+1 when you cast a spell, or you want wizards that basically help you find your instants and sorceries, or help you get your instants and sorceries back from the graveyard. And you also want to be playing a few or a fair few really good instant and sorceries along with your wizards, or you want some things, perhaps token generators that create wizards. I don't know that there's actually that many that actually create token wizards, but I think there's some that make goblins and whatnot. Certainly in these colors. Once again, that could fall into this is somewhat or semi token strategy. And you can have things out that say all your creatures are wizards, so that then when you create these tokens, you are in fact creating wizard tokens as well. So that way you can benefit from them in that way when you cast more instants and sorceries that happen to make tokens or what have you. Yeah, that's a way you can certainly go with it as well. But just a really good commander that helps your wizards. Next up is Kahira, and he is rare in this sense right now because he actually says a few tribes on him, but mainly his types are cat and beast. So in this sense, we're talking about him or it or her or whatever as a cat commander. So he gives your other cats +1/+1, and he gives them vigilance, and he also has the vigilance. So one of the things that cats really want to do is go wide and be able to not only go wide but go somewhat tall. So your cats are going to get bigger from this guy. You're going to be able to certainly go wide with this commander because not only the vigilance gives you that ability to attack a player with almost all of your pretty much all of your creatures that can, because in that way you don't have to worry about, oh, what about the crackback or something else, because suddenly all my creatures are now tapped, and oh look, I just happen to be open for an attack. Oh look, I'm dead. You know, certainly you can hold back some blockers with some other commanders, but this just gives you that ability to have your attack and have your blockers too, which is really good for this sort of deck. There are all sorts of really great cats that will go into this commander, and I think it's a much better commander for cat tribal on its own. Now the whole part that's on this card that says companion, just ignore that part because companion's rule has changed in the last year, I believe, and I don't see it going back. I don't think it will ever go back. And the rule that is now makes it how it works in the game is just not worth it to play it as part of your, well, as your 101st card as your companion, unless you actually are just actively playing it as part of a cat tribal command deck, or maybe one of the other tribes, but it's mainly been seen in cat tribal. But I think it's honestly a better commander than Arabo. Arabo pumps one creature, and again, like I said, cats want to go wide. They want to have lots of lords that give all of your cats a benefit. So I think he's a much better commander for that tribe in that way. Next one is Omnes, Locus of Rage. Now he's 3 generic, 2 red, 2 green, and he has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, you create a 5/5 elemental creature token, and then whenever an elemental dies, he can lightning bolt something or lightning bolt any target. So he deals 3 damage to any target. So this is a great elemental commander. He has that landfall ability, which is pretty good. Some people really lean into the landfall ability side of Omnath a lot more than being a elemental tribal commander. But I've seen a few people run this as an elemental tribal commander. because he cares about elementals dying. So what you're trying to do here is um, you're trying to attack with your elementals into more or so bad attacks, or you're trying to sacrifice them, or you're trying to just dominate with your elementals. And even if they die by happenstance, then omnes going to trigger and he's just going to basically kill everyone anyway, and you're going to win the game by pinging people and shooting people and getting rid of their creatures and whatnot and all this sort of thing. So omnes is a great commander for this tribe. Next up is on the bottom left hand side, which is Azuri, who is 2 green. And Azuri has the ability to regenerate an elf, which regenerate basically means if it would die, you can pay this cost and it doesn't die for this turn, and then it comes in tapped. Then he has basically an overrun ability where you pay 2 and 3 green, and all your elf creatures get +3/+3 and trample until end of turn. Now, I was throwing up between Azuri or Marwyn, the Nurturer, here for this spot. They're both pretty good commanders for elves. I just think Azuri is a little bit more of a better payoff for your elf ball deck, because he allows your mostly otherwise irrelevant mana dork elves to actually become threats and actually make you win the game. Even if Azuri's in the 99, I think he's probably the best card in your deck that you actually want. So I think he's more of a commander than most of the other elf ball style commanders, because he actually makes your elves threats and actually makes you win the game at some point. Next up is Rakdos. And when Rakdos comes into the battlefield, he basically just says destroy all non-demons, non-imps, and devils, I think it is, that he has in his text. But he says flip a coin for each creature that is not a demon, devil, or imp, and if they fail that flip, they die. I don't know whether it's tails or it's heads that they fail and they die. I can't remember which it is, sorry. But Rakdos basically board wipes everyone who's not playing, these 3 very specific types of creatures for most of the time. And if he doesn't completely board wipe them, he usually just gets rid of so many key creatures from other people's strategy. Plus he has flying and trample. Plus most of your big demons and whatnot are going to have flying. So if he just kills most of other people's flyers or people's creatures with reach and whatnot, it's basically like he killed every creature on the battlefield anyway, because now there's nothing to block all the demons, and your demons are just going to get through. So he really helps out your demons to get through and to get in there and win you the game, because that's a lot of the problem with demons is getting through for damage, because despite having flying, there's still creatures that have reach, and there's still ways that players will have things that say, flyers cannot attack or whatever, or, what have you. Next up is a new commander. There's 2 more new commanders up after this. But anyway, next up is a very new commander, in fact. Anawan, the Ruin Thief. He's 2 and a blue and a black. And he gives your other rogues +1/+1. Then whenever a rogue deals combat damage to any player, or for each damage that's dealt to a player, they mill that many cards. Then if they have a creature in those cards, you draw a card. So rogues weren't very supported up until Anawan sort of came out. So he's really showing the way for the fact that new commanders of new tribes are always going to be coming out, and that's a good thing to be seen because people want to play new and unique and different things. And people are always interested in different things. Some people really like cats, some people like dogs, some people like squirrels, like me. And there's just like a lot of it's really good to see that they actually bring in some of these great things so that we can play these things. Well, I don't play them, but so that people can play them if they wish to, or if they think, oh, that sounds cool, dog tribe or whatever. But yeah, he's a pretty good commander for rogues, and most of your rogues have evasion, and some of your rogues incidentally care about milling people and whatnot. So and giving you benefits for that. So there's the new San, the Trickster, which has Rogue Ninjutsu, which means whenever an unblocked rogue, well, there would if a rogue would be not blocked by a player, you can put him tapped and attacking into the battlefield, and then when he hits a player, you can return a permanent card from their graveyard to the battlefield under your control. This is just absurdly good in this Anawan deck, and he's a new card as well from Zendikar. So yeah, and Anawan's from the Commander precons from Zendikar. A fairly more recent and somewhat harder to find commander, I would say to some degree, is the next one and the last one for our tribal mix is Ineaz, who is, I believe, 2 and 2 blue, or is it 3 and 2 blue? I can't recall. Sorry. And he has flying whenever he has the ability. I think it's to pay Azurius, isn't it? I believe. And flying creatures you control get +1/+1. Then whenever I think it's 3 flying creatures attack, I believe, you may select creatures, or I think it's actually permanents now, isn't it? From each player and rotate them around the board. I think it's is it just to the left? I think it's to the left. So each player basically gains control of something from the player to their left, or is it their right? I can't remember, sorry. It's one or the other. So basically, in this deck, you're going to be playing all these cheap birds that you can make bigger, certainly. And it does care about bird tribal. So help pumping your birds, helping them get through for significant damage, not just 1 damage, which is not very relevant in the game. And it certainly is a good mana sink once you sort of don't have very much more in your hand. You can just keep pumping your birds to make them bigger. So this can be, somewhat equivalent to Azuri's ability, or even better than Azuri's ability that we were talking about earlier, giving them +3/+3. But the birds you control already have flying, so that's a pretty good sense of evasion. Even though I was saying, with rakdos before, it's hard to sometimes get through with flyers, but that's usually because they're so much bigger, like when they start out. So people try to put up their defenses, or are getting their defenses up by the time that rakdoses coming out. With Ineaz, you've probably got a lot smaller creatures for the most part, things that are 1/1s and 2/2s or what have you. So just pumping them up and making them into 5/5s, 6/6s, 7/7s, and what have you, making them actually relevant in combat. Works pretty easily, and it's fairly inexpensive to do so. But that other ability to just swap around permanents and suddenly I'm giving you this bird that's attacking Steve over there. Somehow I don't know how some of these rules work because you're still in combat. So once you say, I'm going to give you this bird that is still attacking Steve over there, and then I'm going to give Steve your planeswalker or whatever that you've got here, or this thing here, or this enchantment, or I'm gonna take Steve's flying creature and give it to Joe, and Joe, I'm gonna take your planeswalker, or I'm gonna take this from you. That ability can be really annoying to some people, and I would find it pretty annoying, but because usually I'd be the one that has some of the better sort of stuff, I would say, on the board, and it's like, damn thieves, no, you're stealing my stuff, no, it's mine, give it back, type thing. But it's just one of those things to give you an advantage because you've just got these quote unquote again bad flyers, and you can just make a lot of tokens, or you can just find a lot of these very janky sort of bad flyers that don't really do that much, that you feel fine to give away and say, hey, look, I'll take that from you to give it to you. 2 or 3 turns a turn later, you'll say, oh, well, now that you've got that thing, I'll give it to this next person, and then the next turn you can say, oh, well, cool, I've just got that. Thank you very much for giving that to me. It's done the full round of the table, essentially. So you've taken it from the first player and taken it all the way around to back to you, so that you've now got one of the best things, and everyone else is just left with these very janky bad birds that don't really do very much for them. That's why sort of Dovescape is a pretty mean sort of card, because it stops people from playing even the things that draw them cards sometimes and whatnot, things like this, or even ramp and things like this. So it makes people have to play the game with creatures only for the most part, and then if you've got things like this to basically if you want to, you can even go that route by countering your own things and just making more and more janky birds that you want to give away anyway. And then when your opponents are stuck playing, their creatures, and they don't have any other way to do very much, you're just like, oh, well, I'll take that, or you'll take this, so that then he can take that, or she can take that, and then I'll take it, in 2 or 3 turns, whatever. Really interesting commander. But we'll move on now. Next to themes. So there's lots of different themes in Commander, and tokens and tribal are quote unquote themes of Commander as well, I guess. But this sort of falls under a lot of different things, I would say, because I couldn't really group a lot of things together, and I just sort of thought, oh, well, themes, this is a good way to explain it. So the first one, which is artifacts, with Jorah Weatherlight Captain. She is 2 generic, a blue and a red. So whenever you cast a historic spell, which is a legend, an artifact, or a saga, you draw a card. Mostly we're focusing on the artifact, because the artifacts the easiest version of this to play, basically, and the most powerful version of this to play. So yeah, artifacts are a big thing, and Jorah's pretty good commander for artifacts. She doesn't really care that much about doing much with artifacts. She draws you cards for playing artifacts, so she rewards you for playing artifacts. But there certainly are some really good artifacts out there. You can build this in any number of ways. You can build this very casually, and you can even build this as a very competitive deck on a budget, because there are so many sort of very cheap artifacts that just sort of cantrip and draw you more cards, which eventually you can sort of storm off with and things like this. So she's a very strong artifact commander. Up next is Ifara, I believe that's how you pronounce it, who is one generic, a green and a blue. She has Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, a target creature gets +1/+1 and flying until end of turn. And this is where I kind of fell out of trying to find a good commander here. Ifara's not that good. She's okay, but unfortunately, I put some restrictions on saying what these commanders were, and I sort of said that at the beginning. I wanted to stick to commanders that you could build on a budget, and stick to commanders that were either 1 or 2 colors. So the better commanders in enchantments are 3 colors, and the better commanders in enchantments are more expensive. So there's just not that many options. So Ifara came out of me looking through the commanders that were somewhat decent but not amazing. She's not terrible, I'm not saying that. She's just not the most amazing, but she certainly does care about enchantments, and she helps give your random creatures that you're going to be playing in this deck. She can even give herself the flying, I would say, as well. So she could sort of fall into another category as well, which we'll be talking about later. But certainly an okay commander for enchantments, and just for a generic, sort of more budget introductory deck, I would say. The next one is Barigmos, or Barigmos. I believe he is 4 double red, double green. He has trample, and when he comes into the battlefield, you look at the top 3 cards of your library and you put all land cards from among them into your hand. And then he has this ability to discard lands to lightning bolt any target. So once again, deal 3 damage to any target. So this is a lands matter commander. Now this is not landfall style commander, but he does care about lands. So what you want to do with him is try to get many lands in your hand somehow. And there are many ways to get lands in your hand with decks that are usually built with him. So what you're trying to do is infinitely shoot people with your lands, basically. So you're not running many other creatures or much else except for lands and ramp in this deck. All you want to do is get your commander, then get as many lands as you possibly can in your hand, and then basically storm off by shooting, well, not storm off, but kill people by shooting them with your lands, basically by discarding them and whatnot. So you've got to have a lot of mana for this to work. Your commander costs a lot to start with. He's got to sit there for a little while. You've got to draw a lot of lands. You can sort of punch people with your commander as well, which can help, but mostly what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the point where you have a critical mass of lands. You can float a lot of your mana. The news card that's from Zendikar Rising Nihiri's lithoforming would be really good in this deck, because what you do here is you sacrifice a lot of your lands, basically all of your lands. You float all your mana, the rest of your mana that you have. You float all your mana, you sacrifice all your lands, you playing something like Crucible of Worlds, you draw a lot of lands, then you can play a lot of lands from your graveyard, and then you can like have things that will bring back, instant sorceries as well. So this is a way that you can, not play additional lands, but there are other ways you can play additional lands as well, so that you can get to the point of, well, now what I'm going to do is sacrifice all my lands and somehow put them into my hand and then shoot everyone and game's over. So that's what you're trying to do with this deck. It's very interesting and sort of difficult commander to work around. There's lots of ways you can blink him to continually draw, 3 lands, or essentially 3 lands, things that get you more lands into your hand. So you all often want things that draw you lands specifically, because you don't want to draw all the other spells that much that are in your deck. You want to only draw the lands part for the most part once you get Beregnus out, or just more spells that actually draw you more lands. Once you've ramped and got to your commander, you don't need any more ramp. You just need more lands in your hand so you can shoot everyone. Next up is something that is somewhat derivative of artifacts, which is equipment. And that comes with Akiri, Fearless Voyager, who's 1 generic, 1 red, and 1 white. Whenever a equipped creature attacks a player, you draw a card. So if you attack one player with an equipped creature, you draw 1 card. If you attack 2 different players, you draw 2 cards. If you attack 3 different players, you draw 3 cards. And then he has this, she has this ability for 1 white to unattach an equipment from a creature that you control, and that creature gains indestructible and becomes tapped. So that's basically what Regenerate sort of does as well. So she, again, pronouns, has that ability to essentially regenerate target creature for 1 white, as long as it's equipped, which is pretty good. And it also provides you card advantage, so you want to be running a lot of good equipments in this deck. Now, as I said, this is a bit derivative of artifacts. All equipment are artifacts, so some people lump saying this is an artifact commander. Well, it's sort of an artifact commander, but it cares about equipment. It cares about the things it's suited up with, not just playing artifacts, or artifacts that happen to be more passive on the battlefield, give other benefits like maybe Eldrazi Monument or whatever, or more storm style artifacts or what have you. So it really cares about putting equipment onto creatures, attacking with those equipped creatures, and then it cares about protecting those equipped creatures. The next one is Siona, Captain of the Pylus, and she is a somewhat derivative of enchantments because she cares about auras. So when she enters, she can look at the top 3 cards of your library, I believe, and get an aura from among them, or maybe it's 3 or 4, I can't recall, sorry, and get an aura from among them into your hand. And then whenever you target a creature with an aura spell, you can create a 1/1 human soldier. So that's just more things for you to put your auras on. And again, this is a bit derivative of enchantment. But again, in this deck, you are looking to quote unquote suit up your creatures, suit up as many creatures as you can, go wide, and there's even a few combos with this commander, so that's kind of cool that you can basically make infinite tokens and things like this. Some people will say, well, this is a token commander. It's not really. It cares about auras. There's just like that's a happenstance that it happens to make tokens, more or less. Once again, with what I was saying about leftless before, she's leftless is more about dragons. This is more about auras. So the auras are doing the work, not so much the tokens. Whereas before, when you're looking at a token stack, most of the tokens are doing quote unquote the work. So yeah, this will be a great commander. There's a lot of really good auras in these colors, and a lot of things that care about having auras on them, or care about enchanting things or playing auras or playing enchantments. So there's a lot of play there, like Shram, things like that that are good. And last but not least is something that's sort of inherent in equipment and in auras, which is Voltron. So Voltron's completely different from most of the other decks that I've been talking about here. And most of the other decks that I've been talking about are quote unquote what I'll say go wide decks. Even like I'm saying, like here and there, some of these want to go tall and wide. That more or less that means that you're attacking with lots and lots of different creatures, but you're also not just attacking with lots and lots of creatures. You're also attacking with or making your little creatures bigger so that they punch harder or what have you, or just making more of the creatures that actually, or being able to get through somehow, give them evasion, or give them the chance that they need, give them that opportunity, kill the things that are in your way, that sort of thing. But Voltron is completely different. In Voltron, you are completely focused on trying to get your commanders specifically to deal that 21 points of damage to each other player. So now I've chosen an interesting commander to represent this, and Tangarth doesn't really scream out super duper too much that he is a Voltron commander, but he is a pretty good Voltron commander. But anyway, Tangarth is 2, a red and a green. He can't be blocked by more than one creature, I believe. And as long as he is tapped on the battlefield, under, I believe this is under anyone's control, you can basically hand him over when somebody goes to attack to somebody else. When they go to attack, and you can choose who Tangarth is attacking. So when somebody goes to attack, you make your Tangarth attack somebody along with their attack. So you're basically giving them this free 5/5 attacker whenever they go to combat. But the idea here is that you will put equipment and auras and other things on Tangarth to make him bigger and stronger and hit harder and all that sort of thing. Or you'll put equipment and other things on other people's stuff, or you use other stuff so that people cannot attack you, or incentivize not to attack you, so that in this way, when Tangarth gets into combat, eventually he will just hit one or two different players every round, and once he's out, he attacks one person, then you give him to maybe that person or the next person in line. You make Tangarth attack the person that he just attacked if it's not the person that has already got control of him. But then it comes to the next person, and again you do the same thing. You're either attacking the person that suffered the first damage, because in this way you can more easily take out one person at a time with Tangarth. It doesn't take very long once he's out, and it is sort of hard to get rid of him and kill him if you put things on him that says he can't be sacrificed, or he can't be targeted, or he has hexproof, or if he would die, he comes back to the battlefield, like totem armor, things like that. He just sticks around for a lot longer and is much harder to get rid of. And then eventually he will kill one player, and then you'll be down to, the three of you. Then you pick another player and you go between the other two people. So at that point you can sort of start going, well, since I hit you this time, and I'm going to give it to you, I'm going to attack Steve. And then Steve, I'm going to give you Tanga. And then Steve, you're going with Tanga on your battlefield. You're going to attack Jim. And then Jim, since Steve attacked you with Tanga, hey, you can attack Steve with Tanga, Jim. There you go. Now you've like basically locked them into that, parlay between each other. So now they'll basically take each other out, and you'll basically win in this scenario where now there's that each of them will attack each other every single turn, basically. And you can put things on him, like when he hits, he goads that player, so basically they'll have to attack the other player, so you'll never basically get attacked until if it's one-on-one. And then by that time, they're probably at such a low life total that it doesn't matter. Plus, you're also going to be chipping in to attack them on your turns as well, so it's just not going to take very much for Tenga to take people out. I was looking at this deck a while back. I actually saw a 5-color commander deck where the idea is this avatar creature that you basically give it to everyone, basically the same way the Tangraph sort of works, but it's at the upkeep. And during your upkeep, you choose a creature type, and that creature type gets +3/+3, I believe. And basically, that's another way to do this whole. I'll put enchantments on my commander, and my commander will be this pinball that I give to everyone else, and then it will take everyone else out. Because once it's out, it will kill everyone else. So that's a kind of funny, interesting idea. But we'll move on now. We'll move over to slowly wrapping this up.
Those are the decks that I would suggest for new players. Now, there are some other decks that you could certainly get into playing around with and seeing if you like as you go along and get deeper and deeper into the Magic the Gathering format and the EDH Commander format. But I think, as I said, sort of starting off very basically so that, you know the rules when you start playing the game. But it's just like learning the sequencing and learning like what you can and can't do more or less, and learning, decision-making trees, I guess, is, again, one of those big things. It helps to have a lot of experience and know what you're really doing and know what threats are and all that sort of threat assessment. And it's good to be politicky as well, but it's just one of those things. I think a lot of these budget decks just need to do what they want to do, again, as I sort of said. So you're not really having that many decision-making moments, so that you're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. What should I, you don't want to ask other people what you should do, sort of thing too much. But it's fine to say, what should I do? Like a little bit, but like you should just do what your deck's trying to do for the most part. That's my ultimate final little bit of advice that I probably have hammered around like a couple dozen times throughout this video. But that's the biggest thing. Just do what your deck's doing until something is going to stop you from doing what you're doing. Don't worry about it. If somebody else wins, they win. That's it. You can't really do very much about it, in my opinion, really, until you get more experience in playing this game, until knowing, artifacts are a big problem, or this specific artifact's a big problem, or planeswalkers are a big problem, or what have you, amongst the people that I play with, or whatever, So until you start getting to know what other decks are doing, you need to just learn what you want to do. So that's pretty much it for this video today. And as I said, we'll have a couple of links for a couple decks in the description. And in a couple of weeks, there will be a post on my Patreon for the other decks that I've discussed. So hope that you'll enjoy those and be able to play some great games of Commander in the future. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.